Excellent. That's right. We are on time, which is early for GISH. Hello, everyone. Good morning, noon, evening to all of you. Happy Sunday/Monday to all of you. People are filing in now. I am Charlie. I am Vice President of GISH. I'm here to usher you into an amazing VIG panel with one Chris Schmelke. Before we go to the amazingness that is Chris and talk about photography and composition and snacks, I wanted to just do a couple of quick announcements. There are 10 days left to invite friends and influence people. We have 10 days left of registration for the 2021, the big hunt. And it is going to be a hunt like no other. So hopefully you've already joined. If you're facing financial hardship, remember we have scholarships. If you're inviting anybody, remind them if they're facing the same thing. We want everybody to find some joy. We want to spark joy, just like Marie Kondo, but like instead of getting rid of stuff, you're collecting things. Anyway, and then also join us Tuesday for GISH 101, a GISH to build a dream on. We're going to be talking about team communication, ghosting, merging, etc. We're going to be talking about all the mechanics of team stuff, as well as answer some questions if you have any questions too. But enough of that. Let's talk to Chris. Hi, Chris.
Charlie, you could listen to your voice all day, like those stop motion Christmas shows of the 50s.
That's exactly and 60s. What I am. I'm a claymation figure.
You are a claymation.
That's what I feel like right now.
Not like Gumby, but those great ones.
Did you ever see? There's a Mark Twain claymation that is freaky and existential. I saw as a kid. It's about Mark Twain's life, and it has some of they basically reenact stuff from his books, and it's the creepiest, scariest stuff. Highly recommend that one.
I did. My early going back just to Viewmasters for a second, but I always wished Viewmasters stuck around a little longer. I know they're still around, but there was something amazing about them.
Something so cool. Well, so Chris, everybody knows you. This is part of the reason we love having you here. Is you're an esteemed part of the convention community, of fandom, of so much. People know you in your own right. You're an amazing bassist, amazing photographer. You've been photographing at conventions for 15 years. And what I think all of us at GISH have always appreciated about you is you have this knack for creativity and compassion. You manage to photograph tons of people at events where they get to meet people that they've always wanted to meet. And this is a singular moment. And there's something about your ability to capture moments, these like slice of life moments of this interaction between people, both fans and the people they're there to meet. And you do it in such an efficient manner, but also in such a compassionate way. You've got music going. No photograph is alike, and you're just such a talented dude. So I'd love it if you would just tell us a little bit about your background and history and how you got to be such an amazing photographer.
Thank you, Charlie, for that. You're way too sweet. I started photography in probably 2002. It was actually related to eBay. Got me back into digital photography. As you mentioned, I had a band in New York, and we played our last show. We opened for the Libertines at CBGB's, which was amazing. And band crumbled soon after that. Got back into shooting friends' bands in New York, which then led into doing some portrait work for iStock Photo, which was a company in Calgary, which sold to Getty for their online articles. And one thing led into another. Around that time, creation was kind of ramping up, like photo ops were starting to get more popular. My first show was actually Stargate on the East Coast, and I started taking care of all of their shows on the East, which were Stargate, Star Trek, obviously, which was a huge thing, and they started doing some smaller type Wizard type shows before Wizard and Comic-Con were doing huge amounts of photo ops at shows, and actually started Lord of the Rings. started on the West Coast. They had a photographer in LA doing the photos who was an employee from Creation who was kind of over his head. He wasn't a photographer. And if you don't, early on, I was kind of given free reins to create an atmosphere and to mold it in the way that I wanted it to be. And I always approached it to mold it in a way, looking at it from a fan's perspective on how I would want the show to, like the photos to be remembered for me going, how I would want it, and not just coming and being yelled at and screamed at, next. So for me, music is key to multiple things in the photo room, that serves to kind of drown out your conversation with the actor that no one else can hear it, because it's obviously personal, as short of a time as it is. But also it kind of dictates the pace of the room, which is why you don't need to say next, because we all know why we're there. We're there to get a photo with someone, and to create an atmosphere of screaming and negativity. That's what you're going to remember. When you look at the photo, you say, "Oh, that was great. I got a picture with Misha, but the guy in there screamed at me and he put ringing in my ears from his yell," opposed to Misha dance with me to a Carpenter song. So for that's not 10 minutes, it could be 10 seconds, but he twirled, that just rings in my mind, because that, the fan who had that photo, she years later said, when I hear that song, I think of that moment.
Yeah.
And that is the power of music related to memories.
Well, it's so cool too, because music is such a part of who you are, and for you to bring that in, I think it's just I think probably aids in your expression as a photographer. You're looking for those moments, you're looking for that note, that beat, like you're already kind of weaving in your own previous art into the current art, which is
I honestly,
cool.
and it's a great point, because it's also, I used to make mixtapes for all my friends, and when I have a memory when someone will say, "Oh, I really like that song," like I'll remember and I'll associate that song with that person. So I think I released because everyone was for years asking, we want that playlist. Where's the playlist? And I literally have probably 15 different playlists with over 3,000 songs. So
amazing.
Kind of shepherded songs together that represented the multiple different playlists, because there are some songs that have been there since I started. And go ahead, sorry.
With people watching right now, if you've had a photograph taken by Chris, would you just raise your hand? Just click that raise hand button. I just want to see how many people have and have not, because if you haven't had a photograph from Chris, first of all, highly recommend. Second of all, what he's talking about is a big part of this process. When you're gishing, so much of what listen, attitude during gish fluctuates. There's hard moments and there's fun moments and there's all sorts of stuff going on. But one of the takeaways, I think, from this part of the conversation for me, is like someone looking from the outside in and someone who wants to create art, is the mood of what you're doing while you're creating that art can affect what you're seeing on the frame. Would you mind, Chris, talking a little bit about that too? I mean, you're talking about curating a moment rather than just like, here's your photograph, get out,
like portraits. I'm just going to share. Can I share a screen for a second?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just going to, just to demonstrate. Cool. You guys should see stuff now.
Yep.
Right. All right, cool. This was Brianna's album cover. So I think we were in Vegas, and not this one specifically, but this was the shoot. I think it was this. And it was before karaoke. She had time after her panel. Victoria, who's amazing, who works with me at shows, and she's an amazing makeup artist. She worked with Brianna for a little bit before the shoot, and then she came in, and we did probably 1,200 shots in about 10 minutes. And it's related to the energy of can't be sustained for an incredibly long time in a like doing portraits. So for me, my general rule, if I'm shooting anyone, whether it be Matt or Jared or Jensen or these guys, you know, generally within the first 10 to 15 minutes of shooting, you're going to get or not get what you want to get. So it's, important to have the energy, but also to have the trust with who you're shooting. And I think that translated to, the conventions, because the fans, since I've been there for so long, they know what I do and why I do what I do. So there's a trust between them and with the actor. With the actors, it's naturally, I think, photo ops in general would, just as an actor coming in, if I would probably be a little bit nervous, because you don't know what you're going to get, so the way not that it's my job, but the way, because I could just sit there on a stool, but that's not who I am. So I think it was, the right place at the right time, because it was something I love doing. I think I'm, good at making people comfortable. And the challenge sometimes, especially with photography and how limited time you have with the person, is making them comfortable, because that's when I think people are obviously more themselves, to let their guard down. Because I think when, you naturally put a camera in someone's face, it's intimidating, first off. And if they don't know you, then they don't know what the end result's going to be. So generally, if I'm doing a portrait with anyone, I will, just talk to them for 10, 15 minutes first. Just show them, you can even show them a couple of your shots you've done, just so they know that this guy's not some bumpkin off the street that doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, and this is why you're the perfect person for us to talk about, as for Gishers, is they have a limited amount of time. They need to convey like some things at a higher quality, or the highest quality that they can find in themselves. But also, so before we start talking about editing or, photography equipment, because we already have a question about equipment, which we'll get to. But before we even talk about that, is sort of setting the stage and doing it in a way that's efficient, because they have limited time. They're trying to capture something unique and singular, but the clock's running. So I think it's important that we talk about what happens before you even like pull out the camera, and that trust. We've had some amazing photographs through GISH where people are doing really intimate, wild things where, one of the items, I think it was last year, was doing those sort of Ann Geddes photos that you would do with babies, but with seniors. And some of the results are stunning. I mean, they're just sort of there, and they're sort of naked and sort of in their little rose petals and all this stuff. But to get to that point, they have to have what you're talking about, which is that level of trust. How do you establish that trust with the subject and everybody in the room?
Yeah, I think, before you even specifically on photography, like when I first started, I did weddings for about, 6 months to a year. And I love the actual shooting. It became a challenge with editing after, because of how many photos I had. But I would meet with them one-on-one, whether it be in like a coffee shop or anywhere, just to get a feel for them. Because sometimes, that if I didn't feel from them that they were willing to put what they needed to do to make it as good as it could be, that became more of a challenge. But I think the most important thing is to, just have that one-on-one with whoever you're shooting, or 1-on-2 or 3 or 4, just to get a feel, for them to get a feel, because our job as photographers is to make our subject comfortable, and if we're shooting insects or landscapes, obviously we don't have to worry about that. But people is something else. And, a lot of people, and I don't think it's a common thing, because a lot of specifically actors that have worked with other photographers will tell me from the first shoot that it's different, because they weren't treated like robots, and I think photographers in general, we're so set in what we're trying to get, where my mentality was always to let the person be themselves, opposed to me make them into someone they're not.
Totally. I mean, I look at all these analogies, like you're the perfect person to be having this conversation with, because Gishers are there to try to like check off the list. They're trying to do all these challenges. And so much of that is so visual. It's all visual to some degree, with some few exceptions, but they're there to try to complete something, and to complete it well, you have to establish that trust and have to establish like what you're going for. And like the other thing I was wanting to point out that in what you just said was getting as much experience as you could prior to that moment, so that you also trusted yourself. Like for people to trust you, you have to be confident in what you're doing too, because that creates trust as well, right?
100%. I think, my, start with when I got back into digital photography was revolving around eBay and products. So part of that, I had access to where I did all the photos in a warehouse. And I mentioned this in the past, but for portraits, obviously I was by myself most of the day. So I was practicing on ventriloquist dummies. So with positioning flashes and lighting to, a dummy is a dummy. You can't change that. But the shape of the face is, seeing where light fell, or, what was more kind of dramatic, lighting, and where to position it. That I learned, on my own. I was self-taught as far as photography goes, and I didn't go to school for it. But experience is, breeds confidence, obviously. Yeah. So before I was doing shoots, and honestly, the first, couple were hit and miss sometimes, but you learn from mistakes, honestly, to put yourself into challenging lighting environments with a friend is a great way, because you could have your friend stand in shadows, or stand half in shadows, half in light, lay down on the ground, looking up. You on the ground looking up at them, and seeing the angles that work and don't work. And then when you say you have a portrait shoot, or you're shooting anyone, without even shooting, you'll know the best angles for that person, on what'll be the most flattering and result in the best pictures. Going back to, making the person comfortable. One thing I always tell, especially first, if they nervous about a shoot, to start it by telling the person that let's do some test shots, and then don't say we're starting. So with that mentality, it take complete dupery. It takes the pressure off of you. Yeah, because I think we want to get what we want to, we want to get the shot that we want. But if you tell the person, it starts kind of stressing them out in a way, they'll sense it, and it just won't happen naturally. Nice. So test shot, say, I'm just testing the lighting, and then you just keep shooting and don't tell them we started. You usually segue right into it. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. It kind of bypasses that stress level for to add to that too. Allison asked, do you have any other advice for staging a photo? It sounds like trickery. It sounds like practice. Anything else you'd recommend for staging? Bribery. Good. Bribery, dupery. What was the question about staging? Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're setting up the subject in that case and working on different kinds of lighting aspects. Are there any other tips that you have for staging a photo to get what you want out of it? It's depending, I guess, if you're outdoors or indoors, on if music can play a role, because music, for me, it's not an easy thing to do outside, because you can't be like, oh, throw on my AirPod, you check it out. And you don't want to not hear the person when they're talking. But indoors, especially when the fans and the actors are coming in, you get a feel for the music that works and puts them at ease. I can't play Slayer, Raining Blood at a show, because that's I can. I mean, I will, but depends on the show. It depends on the show. Actually, Jim Momoa. I think I played it for Jason. That was funny. But someone like, just an example, nothing against her, Joan Collins. She came in early to her photos in Vegas a couple years ago, and I had run to the restroom because I had like 15 minutes. She came in 10 minutes early, and someone came right when I came out of the bathroom and said, Joan Collins is there. I said, what's she doing here so early? And Blur was playing. And as soon as I walked in, her first words were, what is this blasphemous music? So right off the bat, that's not how I would have started it. I would have played something more like, some Cuban jazz music or something, because someone I don't know, I don't know what they like yet. So again, it goes back to when I used to make mixtapes. It's like, I remember, from the beginning, I remembered that Jared loved Pearl Jam because I was playing when he first came in the room. So that was right off the bat. He was in the mood of that he was comfortable in an environment that doesn't lend itself to making you comfortable. And that was that.
Well, so Suzanne has a question too, and this kind of dovetails into that a little bit, is do you have any tips for photographing people who are always hate photos of themselves? And people, I mean, it's hard to look at yourself in the mirror in a photograph. It's, we're our worst critics a lot of times, but do you have any tips for making, how you make, like the example with Jared is playing music and setting that like environment for him to feel comfortable. Anything else you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I would say that there's a much larger percentage of people that hate their pictures more than like their pictures. So in that case, what I would do is, you take some shots and maybe show them, you like pick out one or two that you are good, and say, check, this is what we're doing, just take a look, and just want to make sure you like it. So right off the bat, they know that you're sharing, because a lot of times it's, it's kind of, I'm doing my thing, you do your thing. Like, I don't want to show you anything. But just working with them and continuing to talk to them and just reinforcing that, it's photography is, it's not an easy thing for people that don't like to do it, because it's stressful, because you're like, do I look terrible in every photo? But if you show them that, hey, and just reinforcing that it's a positive environment, I think that's key, it's just positivity. There's enough negativity in the world.
I have a technical question for you. So Taylor asked, do you always shoot in manual? It can be easier if lighting is always the same, but if lighting is changing, does letting the camera help you focus on posing and composition that way? How do you ride that lighting?
Again, it's a great question. I shoot mostly with Leica cameras, for the shows. I use Canon. I've always used them. It's just what my dad used. So, I don't get into the Nikon, Canon, Sony wars or anything. I think, photography is what it is. And however you do it is fine in my book. As far as auto, like if I'm shooting a concert, again, it depends on the environment. For portraits, I will always shoot manual, and it's manual lenses and manual cameras. So you have you're controlling everything. As far as like concerts, the lighting is changing so quickly, and especially the hellish hardcore bands I used to shoot were jumping off the stage and running all over the place. So even the conventions, Rob and the band have so much energy on stage. So manual, I have shot manual some shots, and it's only because of experience that I know what to expect before it happens. As far as I know, at the end of the show, Rob is going to jump off the drums, so I could be set to be waiting for that shot. So again, it's knowing your environment in advance, and I think, it's possible you can get caught up in trying to plan things out so much. And I've always approached it to just kind of trust yourself, and be confident in your ability. And it goes back to before to the practice, to the more the better, and don't say it's raining today, I don't want to go out and take shots, because you may be in a situation where you need to, and you want to be prepared to know what to do in that situation.
Yeah, and that preparation is obviously, like, there's a quote like, luck is someone prepared meeting an opportunity, right? And part of being prepared is having some great equipment. We're seeing a lot of questions about, like, do you have a tripod? Do you have a consumer level tripod recommendation? I think for product recommends, if you don't mind, maybe we can just put together some ideas of things that you've used in the past that are quick and simple that you can bring around. I have a
Yeah, of course.
feeling people are going to need some of that product to like get what they want to get out of the hunt potentially. So maybe we can send that out after the fact or something like that.
Yeah, of course. Well,
Sweet.
just tripods, just real quick. I
Yeah.
would always prefer a monopod than a
Mhm.
tripod because the monopod is something you could almost, not that you could leave it attached, but they have ones where you could leave the plate on it and then just pop it in when you want it. Tripods and monopods, I use Manfrotto, which is an Italian company. You could get cheap ones, and I've always found that as soon as you bring one to, say, the beach, it's game over and trashed. Where you have, again, it's you get a good one, you're going to have it a long time. It's also much more easier to open and close the Manfrotto ones that I use. I don't use a tripod generally because being stagnant is something I'm kind of not moving around is part of the energy, and especially in portraits, if you were using a tripod, the energy's down because it's not fluid. It's I'm here, I'm the robot man in the tripod. Tripods are great for night exposures and Milky Way shots and landscapes, waterfalls, things like that. But for portraits, generally, you're moving around, and if you're not moving, then their energy won't be as, I think, fluid with you, because you're working together.
Yeah, and I think the other one that we do a lot of, obviously, is like a self-portrait. There's a lot, obviously, during COVID, people were quarantined and they were having to do sort of self-portraiture to try to capture, something.
Yeah, those tripods would be great for that.
Yeah, and do you, so on that note, obviously a lot of people here may be using their phones as well. Do you have apps that you love for your like taking or editing or anything like that on your phone, or are you just sort of like you're just so good at it that you have, you take a picture on your iPhone and it's great?
Well, I think generally, when aliens invade and humanity is reduced to living in these little bunkers, which I'm joking, but they're going to say what happened in the 2000s where they stopped printing photos.
Right.
And everything is, on computers now. I've had issues with losing, batches and things like that in the past. Redundancy is the key. And I think that can be applied to everything, especially with how much work goes into GISH on creations and things that people make, and the importance of backing up photos, backing up files on multiple places is something I always try to bring up, because I always hear I lost all my files from an entire shoot, and it's in a way because we're not printing anything besides the the stuff that I printed shows, but generally I could remember it's probably been 2 years since I printed any photos that I've taken. As far as apps on the phone, generally for stuff I'm taking on my phone, I mean the iPhones have gotten to the point where the editing in it is more than enough. As far as photos go for cameras, once we get to it, I'll show you, because it's Lightroom. Lightroom actually has editing on the phone as well.
Oh, cool.
So
do you want to get into that? There's a lot of questions too about how to pick the right photo, and Lightroom might also, so you can sort of see the organization of it.
Yeah, of course.
You want to jump into that?
Yeah. I'm going to hit this. And then
awesome.
Hit this, and then hit this. All right, cool.
And yeah, if you can just hit full screen on the window there, I think it'll, there you go.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Cool. So this is Lightroom. So generally, I'm just going to get back to the grid. Lightroom was a program created by Adobe, who make Photoshop, probably about almost 20 years ago. I was lucky enough to be in the beta of this when it's changed so much since the beginning. Generally, what it was created for was to eliminate the fact that anyone shooting specifically raw files back in the early 2000s, we used to have to edit one by one in Photoshop. So you would have to open one raw file, then close it, then open another one, then close it. So Lightroom's premise revolves around the fact that you are, in a way, these are the files, but in a way they are ghost versions of the files, because anything you edit is not editing the original file. So the original stays as the original, you'll always have it. So this is Charlie, amazing.
Why would
So
you? Oh,
once
man.
I had to do that. Once you do any edits in, this was actually Charlie, Charlie and I and the GISH team were in a volcano in Iceland, which was amazing.
That's right.
So these are, all types of presets that are built into Lightroom. But right now I'm going to show you specifically a plugin that I use that works with Lightroom. So I'm just going to go quick here just to show you guys. So once you go to File, you can go to Import Photos and Video. So I don't do video. I do some drone stuff, but it's mostly I use it for stills. But once you import photos from here, it then puts them in whatever designated folder you're importing them from, where you can see on my left side here. So like Brianna, so these are all those. So whatever photos you have in that folder will be imported into Lightroom for you to either edit or to delete, which I don't recommend all the time, but sometimes it's easy to hit the wrong button. But just an example, one thing here. So I have 3 shots from Ruth. So I'm selecting all 3. And once I hit, there's a shortcut N that lets you compare each shot. So if you had multiple shots that were, just say Brianna as an example, that are similar, you could look at both and make determinations on which one you're choosing or which one you're not. One cool thing, I'm just going to go to Charlie again. So once I clicked on Charlie right here and edit in, and now these are plugins that work with Lightroom that will open a secondary program, which I'll show you. So
Do you
exposure.
have one called Better Looking Emanator? Do you have
this
one
is
of
the
those?
better look. This is the handsome Charlie filter.
Okay, good. Yeah, put that on there for sure.
Charlie, you're amazing.
Oh my God.
So right here, this is exposure. It's actually called Alien Skin is the name of the program. And Charlie, I'm going to get Charlie the links for the programs I use that he could send. And all of them have free trials. And I think they're all 30-day free trials. So
if people wanted to use them for GISH.
Exactly. So the Lightroom has a free trial. This program has a free trial. Before the plugins get installed, I obviously recommend to make sure Lightroom is working on your system first before you put any of the plugins. But Lightroom has so much in it. This is a more kind of next level kind of thing. So Charlie, you can see, I know you're a big black and white fan, but these are all emulating black and white film.
That's so
So
cool.
I'm just going to click on this one, and I don't want to minimize all the little windows here, but on my right side, you have everything from lighting effects here. So you could, I'm not big into these kind of things, only because I'm a proponent of, get the shot the way you want it before going crazy with the altering. This is when the moon leaked exploded into the cave. Charlie, remember when it shot out of your face? So you can see,
I'm so pale that it's just shining everywhere.
The light shines on Charlie. But yeah, so we'll leave that off. So I can make further edits here. You could do everything from, like I showed, lighting effects. You could add dust to it if you wanted to make it look dusty. I don't know who likes dusty stuff, but exposure, everything else. So once you save, so now it's saving that edit that you did. And what happened? Oh my God, it's gone. No, it's back into Lightroom. So now you have the original and you have the edited version that you did. So now you could compare with N, or you take it further, and you could even, now this is the version we saved. You could then go further and edit in Lightroom and do whatever you want.
Nice.
So it's, it just opens up another creative venue to, edit the photos in a way that you envision.
Nice. And I think, so again, we'll send out a small recommendation list with some, it depends on how deep people want to get into photography, obviously. But if it's something that you're passionate about, some investment is good, but we'll put out something that has a range of options and different sort of price ranges as well. Do you want to talk about that Rachel photo for just a second? I think that
I
depth of
pulled
field
this.
is so cool, and it's so
Yeah,
representative.
this was with I had, one of my Leica lenses that has this amazing blur effect because it's such a large aperture on the lens. So I think this was, you could see it up here. I don't know if it shows, it probably doesn't show. But this was probably at f1, which is really tight focus. So when you're dealing with manual on my Leica camera, I have to use, it's a digital viewfinder that it puts an outline around the subject that's in focus. So when you're dealing with that tight of a focus, you really need to be precise, especially with portraits. With landscapes, you can get away. Do I have one here? Yeah, that was to say, this is, I'm going to go back to Rachel, but this is the same lens.
Yeah.
So if you see on the bottom of Ruth's dress, that's the flare from the light up top, but it's not a common looking, it has a unique look to it. This I brought up, I'm going to come back to this photo as well, but this was the same lens. Going back to Rachel, this was I think this was the one that ended up, that I chose. But there's something about this one which I really liked, but obviously you can see we have a hair here. So going back to Lightroom is obviously a Adobe product, but you could obviously edit in Photoshop
Right.
directly out of Lightroom. So right now it's opening Lightroom, and ta-da, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So here is the same photo. And what I'm going to demonstrate quickly is just a quick touch up on what you could do with Photoshop. So Photoshop is, I've used it for over 20 years, and I know probably 1.4% of it. So it's like and don't feel bad about that, because it's impossible to, and honestly, you don't need to know everything about it, because it's so deep for so many different people on what they're trying to do.
It's Chris, we haven't revealed this yet, so you all are going to hear this for the first time. But our current top tier is going to include classes like this one, and we have Riley Santangelo, who will be teaching a photo editing and Photoshop class.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which is amazing, because
Awesome.
she is a wizard with this sort of stuff.
So
not to make this too salesy, but like there's going to be, we're releasing a list of classes for that as well. So in case you want to complement to the 1.4% that Chris knows,
I'm going to say right off the bat, I am not great in Photoshop. And if you saw what I just did in 3 seconds, you saw how easy this could be for a simple fix like hair in someone's face. So if you guys remember, I'm trying to go back to I'm going to go back to Lightroom for a second. So here is the photo. You can see that hair, and then going back to Photoshop, that it's gone. With just one button, which is this spot healing tool, which kind of samples pixels around what you're painting in a way. And then, for something like hair, you could still see this a little outline. I would have done, more elaborate work, but you could see, it's an entirely new art form in itself, is the importance of touch-ups and someone who retouches photos. And there's a way, and it's been part of society in general, how easy it is to get overdone, where you're completely manipulating someone and changing the way they look. That's not something I would ever do, because the whole reason you're into for me to be into photography is that you're capturing a person and who that person is. And if it's manipulated and changed, then you might as well just be a digital artist, because you're completely changing the person.
That's a good point. A lot of people are asking questions. So we have a no Photoshop rule in terms of like photo manipulation. And I think there's a kind of a distinction there If you check out, if everyone checks out commandment, we have commandments, Chris. I'm sure you already read all 100 of them. We have a commandment that basically says commandment 28 that talks about Photoshop a little bit. In terms of photo editing, there are exceptions to the Photoshop rule, but check out that commandment. But basically, adjusting exposure or making the image brighter or the color or whatever is not the manipulation that you're not permitted to do that. Like manipulation of photos and videos, you're not permitted to do that. But anyway, go check out that commandment, everybody, so that you can get clarity on it. We don't want you fabricating composition from scratch and all of that. You're allowed to edit for lighting exposure, but and fixing things like that doesn't substantively edit what's going on in the content of it, if that makes sense. So check out the commandment for more clarification. Anyway, please, Chris, keep going.
Beautifully said, Charlie. Going back to just photography in general, I mean, we'll take a batch of, say a shoot. So I'm just going to go here. So this is Adam going blind. We were in the Vegas desert. So again, I'm selecting, just 4 images and then looking through them. This was the one that was used ultimately. Just so that, it was a bit odd. He was obviously, it's not a normal kind of pose, opposed to something like Tough Guy Adam with, he's going blind again from the sun.
Curse of the light eyes.
Sometimes going back just as an example, this was part of, a shoot with Ruth that we did in Chicago. Believe it or not, I think it was half a block from where the convention was. But this woods was, I think there was a tornado a couple weeks before we were there. So it looked like, something out of Mordor, Lord of the Ring reference. And so when I saw it by myself, I was walking there by myself, and actually this giant beaver came running at me. And I was like, I got to get Ruth here for a photo shoot. So just because it was so unique, and the fact it was so close, I was like, we need to take advantage of this, because we had planned to do a shoot and it was just finding the right place. But this photo specifically it's a bit blurred. But my point is that sometimes it goes back to being really careful what you delete when you're going through photos, because there could be something that you don't see at first, but when you realize it later, like I'm just going to edit this real quick, just to get an idea. I haven't edited this yet, so you guys are with me for the ride. So this is Alien Skin. I'll give Charlie the link for it. This is another program that has a 30-day trial, but it has all types of plugins, has all types of black and white films, has all types of color films, different effects, glow effects. So I'm just using that as a basis. So I'm actually going to save this. Once you save it in any of these plugins, it makes a copy of it. So again, Lightroom revolves around the fact that you're not altering the original photo, and changes you make or changes you don't make will be reflected in Lightroom while not affecting the original shot. So this is the one we just did. So you can see it's a bit glow. So again, once you're in here, I'm just going to move this. You could obviously adjust the exposure. And again, this is not related to, I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble with what you guys are doing. But just for me, it's just the importance of being real careful what you delete, because, we take so much time to get the photos and travel the places, and to lose something that down the line you may realize, hey, you know what, this works in a different way. So I'm just making some changes here.
That's awesome.
So I'm going to hold that here. So you get the point. It's sometimes there's a piece of gold at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, well, that's a good. This is the other thing too. We're seeing a lot of questions and comments about how do you pick the right, like, what's the right photo, or how do you select, like, what criteria do you go through to sort of say this is the one we need to use out of
Yeah,
hundreds
it's
of
hard
photos.
to, it's something I would love to know how it is or why it is, and again, it's, if I'm doing, let me just find here. So this was Brianna's, the cover we did. So it's a good representation of, there's 1,000 images here. So to go through all of these, which I did, to narrow it down to say this one, I'm just going to pick the ones that I know were possibilities. Again, I'm working with her. This was not with a record label, so it was direct, and obviously, that trust comes into it where, she trusted me to do this, which I was, honored to do. So I think these were 3 choices for the actual cover. I may be off with the third over here, but she early on, I'll always give options, choices. But as far as like picking out, I'm just going to get 2 examples. So 1, 2, 3. Why does one, but it's just in a way you're looking at it, the eye for shots and the eye for composition and things like that. Again, I didn't go to school for it, so I think it's, I always approached photography, because of a love of movies, and cinema, to approaching, anything I'm shooting, especially landscapes or outdoor stuff, to be representation of a story that I haven't written. I'm not a writer, but of a story that someone else could tell. As far as, picking out photos, it's just an eye for, portraits are different than landscapes, obviously, because you want to make that person shown in their best possible way. So obviously I'm not going to show, we could all take the worst photo in the world of a person, and they could be, the most, amazingly beautiful person, depending on angles. So again, it's learning.
Yeah.
It's learning angles. Again, this goes back to portraits. Now going to say landscapes, again, that's just, I'm just going to find a grouping of a bunch that I used. Here we go. Sorry. So right here, I'm just going to show 4 shots. So if I were to pick, what tells a story, and it's not a group of people, for me, it would be one person. So again, I'm not big into overly manipulating, but something like that has a more of a, I think, response than a group of just people that are just, tourists at a waterfall. One person, and then by changing this into, just moving this for a second, changing this, I'm just doing this quick, into black and white, and then I'm adjusting the blacks and then adjusting the whites. And I'm trying to,
yeah, look at all that. Yeah, the detail comes out.
Again, it's implying a bit of a mystery. You want to give a story to the photo to make it, again, I ask this a lot, would we take pictures if no one would see them besides us?
Right.
And I think, that's especially this day and age, and how much revolves around, getting likes and getting hits and all this stuff. You lose focus sometimes on why you have the love of something creatively. If you get caught up in what is the end result going to be on how people see it, opposed to that you love doing it. So, I think people get into things creatively sometimes for the wrong reason, and that's not a bad thing because they're doing something creatively. So ultimately, that is a positive. But as far as picking photos, I think again, it's just experience, going through, even, maybe, I think we all have friends who are photographers or have experience taking pictures, find out from them why they chose the photos that they posted or showed you. What was the reasoning? You know, and some people may not
Mm,
have a reason. That's not bad. You know, but if someone is trying to say why this one opposed to, I'm going to find another example. You know, I think it's just experience. So I mean, I think I have 5 shots here
yeah.
that are all the same. So I mean, something like this where they're similar, you know, you want to find the composition, but also you may find that there's something different in the background about each one. You know, there may be, you may get lucky and there may be lightning, you know, in the background of one
Yeah.
if you took a bunch. So it's just
Chris,
experience to just
that's
go
so
through.
important. We actually we have a commandment, and this is so important, guys. What Chris is talking about here is so important because it's about the expression that you're using, right? In commandment 20, I think, it says artistic expression counts. You don't have to be an artist, quote unquote, though we believe all creatures are, but be thoughtful in your creations. Images that tell a story in a single image are generally more compelling than images where the subjects are posing for the camera. Try to be eye-catching, awe-inspiring, and tell a story that adds a little something extra to the item when you can. When you shine through, your work shines too. This is what you're talking about, is finding those in either in the details or in the expression of it. You know, telling the story. And Chris, you're so good at that. And those Iceland pictures that you're looking at there, I know Tracy lost her drone in the endeavor, but you guys captured some stunning stuff there. And the detail of that place, you know, that's such an alien landscape. Like each place has its own set
Crazy.
of details and stories. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, it is a, you know, as far as landscapes go, on how unique, you know, a place it is, how there's things there that you won't see anywhere else. This was, I think, 11:30 at night. So when are you going to see a sunset that looks like, you know, an atomic
Man.
bomb test at 11:30 at night? Actually, I think I told Tracy here. I said, you got to come, because I was actually in the hotel. The sky turned red. And this was, you know, where we went, which was just down the block. But it's, you know, if you ever get a chance, you know, obviously Charlie's been there, you get attest to just how uniquely amazing a place it is. And a couple of years later, I went back and took my son, and you know, to see his reaction when he got there was worth it. Or I could have turned around as soon as he saw it and been happy that we went, because he realized, you know, just how untamed, not so much untamed, but that it's just, it's like an alien, it's like an alien
It's an
planet,
alien
you know?
landscape, man. Like
Yeah,
the country itself is terraforming every year. Like a waterfall won't be in the same place twice. It's wild.
Darius.
Oh, look who it is. Look, Oscar Academy's in over there.
I says, yeah, so we went to a glacier to kill the glacier. So we had these picks and we chopped up the glacier. No, we didn't chop it up. But it was amazing to go. And I think they filmed, this is where they filmed Batman Begins here.
Right.
In one of the parts when he was training. But walking on this, you know, was just amazing. Put in perspective on how the world is changing and not in a great way, especially climate wise, because there was an older woman who had a picture of the glacier 50 years ago, and it went probably 2 to 3 miles longer than it did now. So seeing, you know, hearing and reading about these things is one thing, but seeing it firsthand was something else. And
well, I think,
really,
and I think that's a good point to sort of start to wind down here with, or close out with, is, you know, you're respecting the subject and the place that it's in, and looking for the stories in there, but you're also not necessarily trying to force what it is. You may find it in Lightroom, you might find it later, and you have to be open to that too. You know, there's a lot of ways to tell a story. If you're a painter, sometimes the strokes come out differently than you intend them, and then, you know, you end up getting something even more interesting or different than you expected, but it's still, you know, you're just still trying to find that story.
Absolutely. I pulled up the Q&A. Can I read off a couple?
Go for it. Yeah, if we want to shotgun through a bunch of those.
If you had to choose one setting on the digital camera to have for all the pictures you take outdoors and then indoors, what would you choose to get the best photo? Manual. you are, a better judge, I would like to think of, especially, and again, this comes back into experience to know the settings. If I'm outdoors doing a portrait, I could generally know pretty closely what the shutter speed and aperture settings are before I even start. So again, that ties into your subject being comfortable with you, and then you portraying, the confidence that you have in what you're doing. If we're fudgeting around and unsure of what the settings are, and we're playing with dials, that's killing energy of the shoot, and also giving them a hint of, not that you don't know what you're doing, but that you don't know everything you should. In a way, it's like, British cab drivers are expected to know the destination wherever it is without looking at a map. So in a way, it's similar to that I think a lot of times if someone's taking pictures, and we're, especially in a portrait kind of, not so much paid setting, but it just helps to make the shoot better if we're shooting and confident. And manual is the best way to learn. So I would always recommend, not so much starting out, but when you're starting out and shooting and you're using automatic is fine, but look at the settings. And Lightroom is great because Lightroom can show you, you can see on the top right here, it shows you the speed, the ISO, which is the, a setting on the camera, the lens type you used, and if my camera was a manual, it would show you the aperture. So
Wow.
Studying, your end result of something you shot in auto is not a bad thing,
Right.
because you'll learn what worked and what didn't. And that's
Who's doing the handstand in that photo on the left? Who is that?
Oh, that's Misha. That's Misha.
Oh, okay, of course. Yep. Okay. Yep.
So again, this is, you could flip it.
That actually looks just the same as he does normally. It's great.
Right, exactly. So I'm just going to do this real quick. So you could, obviously this is, something you could do in Photoshop also, but Lightroom is much easier.
Yep.
So right
Yep,
off the
that's
bat,
about right.
I would be like, oh, this shot doesn't work. But, when you change perspective on things, sometimes it becomes again, so that's why it goes back to be careful what you delete, because sometimes your personal skills may have improved to the point that things creatively in Photoshop or Lightroom that you could do without, again, I'm not a proponent of altering photos, but just, this is the photo. We didn't change it, but by flipping it, you realize that, hey, there's something here that works.
And you get a window into Misha's soul. It's great.
Exactly. So Rebecca asked, how do I make an ordinary picture look great? I think that's tough because, again, you can't change the photo you took. You can change how you took it. So if you're taking ordinary pictures and you want them to be different, then just get better at what you're doing and make them extraordinary yourself, opposed to trying to do it afterwards. And ordinary is subjective, something that someone sees as ordinary. I love pictures of abandoned military installations, but no one else does. I mean, people do, but it's not a wide thing. But I mean, you shoot what you love to shoot and don't change that for anyone. I think that's a good, people ask sometimes about, what they should photograph if they want to get into it. And honestly, everything we talked about as far as energy and passion about something, if you're not shooting, photographing, drawing, or playing music or art for something you love to do, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons, I think. So I think that's a big thing.
It's huge.
A good camera to start learning how to take higher quality shots of people in motion. You probably wanted definitely an SLR, whether it be Canon, Sony, Nikon. Mirrorless is a big thing these days. The cameras I use are mirrorless. The Leica cameras I use are not built for high speed kind of sports. Generally Canon or Sony or Nikon, and the appropriate lens would be something better. Again, depends on how motion are you talking about, like the flash. I love the flash, or just, kids running around. Marion asked, what have you been shooting during quarantine? That's a great question. And I think we've all realized something we didn't know about ourselves during quarantine. What I learned is that traveling plays a huge role in inspiring me to actually want to photograph anything. Besides my, family and kids and doing things like that. But I've been traveling with my mom, who started at Creation when I was 12. We were doing Star Trek conventions when I was 14. I was doing 90 conventions a year with her, sometimes, where we were traveling to 3-4 cities in a weekend, when Next Generation was on. So all of these things, and by having such a, amount of traveling for as long as I can remember, and then to just shut down, I realized that traveling, and it's natural. I think that, seeing new things inspires us to want to create something. So by being home and on top of, dealing with everything we all dealt with, I just found I honestly was taking pictures with my phone. And I've said this before, it's, sometimes it's natural to feel guilty and to not create something, but if it's not happening, sometimes it's best not to force it. But it's just, something I realized was that traveling plays a big role in inspiring me. Lisa asked, can you give hints for perspective, tips for editing, tips for night photography? All, kind of elaborate hints. I think we went over some tips for editing. As far as perspective photos, night photography, honestly, for night photography, definitely we go back to tripods. Monopods are not great for night photography because sometimes you're talking 1 to 2 minute exposures. So definitely get a good tripod. Again, I use Manfrotto, but you don't have to. They all are tripods and they do the same thing. And just keep shooting. I'm going to give Charlie, she mentioned about links. I'm going to give Charlie some links of sites I use and programs I use. So you guys will get that in an email. Best lighting to take photo in, as Carter. Lighting is subjective depending on what you're shooting. As far as for me, I will always choose outdoors and natural, and then manipulating it by myself moving. What I found most, another portrait tip that I use is don't necessarily make the person move around, you move around them. Let them be comfortable. When you start posing people and making them do things that they're not naturally doing, then I think the portraits will reflect that and not be as natural as they could be. So going back just real quick, I'm just going to edit this. So again, this is just a quick edit in Lightroom. You guys can see how easy it is to do stuff. It's just for photography, especially with once digital started taking off and you were having thousands of photos to edit, to be able to do this without having to open and save each file individually was kind of life-changing.
Hey, Chris, we're going to have to wrap up here.
Oh yeah.
But I just wanted to, if we could just come back for a second here. People have a ton of questions and this is such a deep topic, but if we can just, I think the big thing here, first of all, are you going to do classes or private lessons at some point? You 100% should. Have you ever considered?
No, honestly, Creation had asked me about doing, first of all, I was flattered that anyone would ever want to hear what I say. But one thing I realized when I started is that photography, I think we've had this discussion, but photographers in general are, and I think it applies to a lot of artists, is that, you're reluctant to share, information. You're reluctant to share things you've learned because we are, I've been on my own since 2002, as far as, freelance. It's scary to be on your own and you'll fight to do everything you can to protect that. So I think, withholding information as far as, things you've learned or knowledge you have, for me was always something that I said, no one wanted to share with me, but I want to share with everyone, to things that I've learned that if it could help someone. going back to the conventions, if I could create an atmosphere that someone who's not been out of their house in 10 years, they came out because they heard that I will treat them with respect. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That person was motivated to do something they weren't going to do because they heard that I was going to take care of them. That's right there. That's why I do what I do. If it could make someone happy, if we could do one thing a day that makes someone happy, that's what that's a big thing I tell my kids. It's like,
you've made a lot of people happy, Chris, and we're so thankful for that. I mean, I know the community too. So again, just to recap, set that stage, create that environment, get familiar with your equipment, dupe your subjects, I think was another one.
Bribery.
Find the plugins and app and equipment that you test them out, experiment, try stuff out, fixing, not faking, and don't get caught up in the result. Get caught up in something you love in the story you want to tell, and find that story in the lens, and then find that story afterwards, and be dogged for it. Chris,
exactly.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, guys. I love you guys. I love Charlie. I love Alberto. Thank you, Alberto. Thank you for everyone from GISH for making this happen. I was honored to be asked, and I love you guys. And there are brighter days ahead.
There are, and you'll be at cons very soon. So go say hi to Chris. Follow him on his social media. We'll send you guys all an email. All the folks here an email with product recommendations from Chris and plugins and whatnot. Thank you, Berto. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Berto. Bye, guys. Love you.
Bye.